This is the biggest scandal in the history of the presidency. That is how Senator Chris Murphy has repeatedly described Trump's meme coin, which he says is a conduit for bribery. And today, he actually came on the show to talk to us about his new legislation that he just introduced and what he and many others believe is blatant corruption. I kind of want to jump straight into the topic of the day, and that is that, you have called Trump's meme coin the biggest scandal in the history of the presidency, which is a pretty bold claim. So can you walk us through what's happened? How does it work? Why is it a problem ripe for abuse, right? Because we've seen defenders of Trumpcoin arguing, it's just the newest wave of marketing. It is a new way to show support, like a political expression. It's the free market doing free market things. And some have even argued if it is all about the money, it's actually transparency in fundraising.
Yeah, I guess it's true. One way you could show support for your mayor is to hand him a check for $10 million. And on your way out, ask him if he might pave your road. That's a way to show support for him, but it's fundamentally corrupt. We don't allow our elected officials to make money through the back door, especially in exchange for favors and for favorable treatment from the federal government. That's exactly what's happening here. So the meme coin that Donald Trump has issued, but the stable coin as well, are just mechanisms by which individuals quietly, privately, secretly can send money to Donald Trump, a couple bucks or tens of millions of dollars, and then they can show up at the White House and ask for their favor. And everything we know about Donald Trump tells us that they are going to get much better treatment than folks who are not paying Donald Trump off. The meme coin is worth nothing, right? It has no independent value. But it is clearly a way, as we speak, that people who have interest before the federal government are trying to impact Trump's policy, both the meme coin and the stable coin. A trucking company CEO just announced publicly that they were going to buy $20 million of Trump coin because they believe that that was the best way for them to get what they want from the Trump administration. The foreign government of the United Arab Emirates just announced that they were going to conduct a sizable chunk of business in Trump coin because they believe that that's the best way to get favorable treatment as a nation from the Trump administration. This has never, ever happened before in the history of the country. We've never allowed for foreign governments, CEOs, corporations to just send money to the president of the United States in order to try to impact policy. It's fundamentally corrupt, and it's kind of unbelievable that it's not already specifically illegal, but the piece of legislation we're introducing today would make it specifically illegal.
Well, so I guess that's a question. Do you know for certain that Trump is personally profiting from this? And if so, at what level? Or is that kind of impossible to tell from the holdings? Because reports, have noted that 80% of the coin is held by Trump-linked entities. And Trump has said in an interview over the weekend that, he wasn't profiting from anything when asked about the meme coin, that he hasn't even really looked at the profits from crypto. So is there anything concrete there that you know of?
Oh, he's lying. He lies about a lot of stuff. But no, Donald Trump and his family, right, are the main investors in the company that is issuing the stable coin and the meme coin. So Trump absolutely stands to benefit personally, whether he gets that money now or after he is out of the Oval Office. He benefits personally and financially from the sale of the meme coin and the stable coin. How he makes money off the meme coin is a little complicated, right? He sort of sells portions of the overall allotment, and he gets paid by the exchanges when he sells those allotments. But then every time that there is a transaction of existing coin, he also gets a payment as well. All of those payments are made to a company that Trump and his family have the controlling interest in, and thus it is a very clear mechanism by which individuals can send money directly to Donald Trump.
So, getting into your bill specifically, what exactly does it do? Is it kind of Trump's already through the door on this, or would it force Trump and his family to give up whatever stake they have? How exactly would this work for the situation at hand now, as well as moving forward?
Yeah, I do think it's important to acknowledge that what Trump is doing already is illegal. So there's a specific provision of the U.S. Constitution, what's called the Emoluments Clause, weird word, but it's a pretty simple concept. The president of the United States is not allowed to profit off of his office, to use the powers of the presidency in order to enrich himself. That's like exactly what he's doing. One of the things he announced 2 weeks ago was that he's actually going to give private tours of the White House to the top 25 buyers of his crypto coin. I mean, there is no clearer violation of the Constitution, the Emoluments Clause, than that. You can't give access to the White House to induce people to send you money personally. But that's exactly what he's doing. But, there isn't a specific statute right now that says a president or a member of Congress cannot issue a crypto coin and cannot market that coin. In part because all this is pretty new. We haven't regulated the industry writ large, so we haven't had anything specific to say on whether or not it's okay for members of Congress or the president to do it. So this piece of legislation that I'm introducing with Representative Liccardo in the House just sort of simply says that if you're the president or you're a senior member of the administration or you're a member of Congress, you cannot issue a coin. You can't be a owner of a company that issues a coin, and you can't market a coin because you are essentially then using your office in order to try to profit off of this crypto venture.
So, I mean, let's say this gets through, and the question of do you think this actually has a shot of being enacted is, I guess, separate from it. But let's say it does get through. To go back to the question, would this actually strip or force Trump and his family to divest in some way, or is he already through the door?
No, it would be operational going forward, so it wouldn't claw back any profits Trump has already made, but it would require the president and his family to end their investment in this company and in these two coins, the stable coin and the meme coin. The bill would apply, not just to the individual, the member of Congress or the president, but also to their spouse and to their immediate family members. So yeah, this would end the corruption if it passed. And listen, I can't tell you whether it has a shot. I certainly understand that Republicans are lining up with the president, but I think day by day the public is sort of getting turned on to this scheme. I was kind of amazed that when he rolled it out a few months ago, really nobody was paying attention, but I do now sort of pick up in town halls and in my conversations back in Connecticut that my constituents seem to know a lot more about it. And so I think it'll be harder for Republicans to vote against this. Maybe not impossible, but I think it'll be harder for them to vote against it as both Republicans and Democrats out there in the country start to figure out that this is, as I said, probably the most massive corruption of the White House in the history of the country.
Well, I guess to that point, especially in regards to more moderate Republicans, do you think that there is as far as maybe a polling cliff edge where there are people that you're able to peel back to actually vote on something like this? Because I think, there are a lot of Republicans that either overtly or secretly are scared to back a plan that would do anything negative to Trump or his family. Yeah,
it's a really good question. I mean, obviously his approval ratings have moved very quickly over the past couple weeks. Now his approval ratings are hovering around 40%. I do think that that's the place at which some of his enablers and backers start to think twice about giving him carte blanche. I think when a president's approval ratings, especially this early, when you're normally still in your honeymoon period or below 40%, that makes it a little bit harder for your party's members to stay in line, especially on the most unpopular parts of the agenda. So I think there will be opportunities for Republicans to break with the tariff policy. There may be an opportunity for them to vote on this bill. And I think there's a chance that we could win a few over. I think it helps that this bill is more broadly applicable than just the president, right? We're saying here, that no member of Congress should do this either. And that allows somebody to vote for it and say, well, this isn't just about President Trump. It allows a Republican to say, I'm regulating myself, I'm regulating my colleagues. This isn't just about regulating the president. We drafted the bill purposefully that way to make it, more, maybe more palatable for some of Trump's allies.
Are you aware of any of your colleagues in the Senate or the House that are actually holders of Trump coin?
That's a good question. I don't know. That would have to be disclosed on your ethics report. So those are due this spring and this summer. So we may find out pretty soon as to how many members of Congress have the coin. And obviously one of the big questions, is, how much inside information is trading about the coin. If you knew that Trump was about to send out a tweet pushing sale of the coin, which always very quickly but temporarily inflates the value, you would then go out and buy a whole bunch of coin, and then you'd sell it an hour after the tweet. And so, the opportunity for corruption when the president of the United States is pulling the strings on the value of a widely held asset, it's just limitless. So yeah, we want to know who holds it, and we want to see when they bought it, because if we find out that some members of Congress bought it right before Trump, for instance, sent out the notice that everybody was going to get a tour of the White House, if they bought it, that looks pretty freaking corrupt.
Right. And the last thing I'll ask, and it is connected to this, but it's a little bit of a departure, just regarding the efforts of contesting Trump and the future of the Democratic Party, post 2024, we've seen competing engagement strategies. You have people like, Gavin Newsom starting a podcast, and not exclusively, but bringing on big right wing and Trump voices to, I'd say, more hear out rather than debate. You have left-leaning leaders like AOC and Bernie Sanders getting a ton of traction with their Fighting Oligarchy tour and populist messaging. You have Pete Buttigieg hopping on podcasts to try to better communicate the moment, communicate Dem messaging, talk about the future. To your credit, we were talking, you came on our show 2.5 years ago, trying out different avenues. As someone that's in the thick of it, what do you make of the efforts? Do you see winning strategies, losing strategies? And, what do you think would be the most effective way for Democrats to recover from the election? Because, and I know I'm going on a little rant here, but I know that, David Hogg recently, the DNC vice chair, trying to shake things up, has argued we can't just be the party that's against Donald Trump. And as bad as Donald Trump's polling is right now, the Dems polling is kind of just really abysmal right now. What do you see as the winning strategies right now?
Yeah, well, there's a lot there, right? But
I try to cram it in right at the end.
I think part of the reason the Democratic approval rating is really low is because Democrats are upset that Democrats aren't fighting hard enough against Trump. It's not necessarily because they're upset that we haven't unveiled a positive message. It's that they think that we're not stopping what Trump is doing. I mean, my basic theory of the case is this: Donald Trump floods the zone every day, and Democrats have to do the same thing. There is sort of a theory of the case out there that Democrats should sort of sit back and we shouldn't sound so alarmist, and we kind of have to reserve our political capital. And if we, are operating on 5-alarm status every single day, it just isn't credible. I don't believe that. I believe that the moment is urgent, and that if you aren't acting like it's urgent every single day, you actually are losing credibility. And I think that we have to be more prolific in the amount of communication we are doing. I was glad that Pete went on that podcast. There was a lot of risk there, but that was really important risk to take. People want to hear us speaking authentically. They want to hear us speak in a really unfiltered way. They want to hear that we're angry, right? And that doesn't often come across when we are vetting all of our communications through, consultants or pollsters. If we aren't doing what I'm doing with you right now, right, speaking one-on-one with people in an unscripted way. So I just think we have to act with alarmism and urgency. We have to be doing more communication than we're doing. And we have to take risks. And if we do that, then I think we can meet the moment.
Senator Murphy, thank you for the time.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this clip from the full Philip DeFranco show. And also, a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring our Clips channel. Turn your passion into profit over at squarespace.com/filler. Use the QR code. Because whether you're launching a business or a lucrative side hustle, your website is your digital business card. It's the only space where you control the story, no algorithms or distractions. And with Squarespace, it's so easy because they got a ton of stunning professional templates with drag and drop editing that makes site design incredibly simple. No coding required. So get started for free at squarespace.com/filler, or scan the QR code on screen and use code PHIL for 10% off when ready to launch. Squarespace.com/Phil.